Hello, everybody. I'm Patrick Daugherty, joined by Kyle Dvorchak. Welcome to our Week 15 chat, our waivers chat. We'll answer any and all of your fantasy football questions with the playoffs at long last beginning this week. Sorry we're late. I could not stop typing. Kyle just heard me typing. He's like, when are you going to start the chat? And I'm like, quiet, I have to type more. And sorry, I was wrapping something up. Sorry, we're a few minutes late here. Sorry if you didn't make the playoffs. Congratulations if you did make the playoffs. We assume those of you who will be joining us are in the playoffs, which are really getting underway. Kyle, what kind of waivers week is it in general? Is help on the way? It seems just from looking at it from afar, or not doing a deep dive, I should say, it seemed like better than last week, but not like the amazing waivers week. I mean, not surprising that it's week 15 and there aren't really diamonds in the rough to be uncovered at this point. But anyone like interesting that you would consider a must add off of waivers this week?
Yeah, let's start with Ty Chandler. We saw Alexander Madison go down with an ankle sprain. I haven't seen yet whether it's the highest ankle sprain in the world or if it's basically at the bottom of his foot. But generally, it seems like the timetable for such injuries is multi-week, a week or two at best. So for now, we go with Chandler, who has a 3-down skill set and is just the only name to know in this backfield. Kenny Nwangwu played 3 snaps, I think, last week. So we've got another Zeke situation where, regardless of what you think of the talent, Chandler's probably a better talent than Zeke at this point in his career. We have a workhorse back in the making, so it's undoubtedly Ty Chandler.
What did you think of the debate that is Zeke a league winner? Did you see our guy Liam Murphy debating it on Twitter? They were getting into the semantics of Zeke is a league winner. He was certainly a week winner. He was one of the top 2 running backs of week 14. You're telling me you're guaranteeing that kind of impact for Ty Chandler this week?
Didn't Zeke literally score more points than any other running back on the week? Like, he was the RB1 overall, I
believe he was the RB2 overall, not RB1.
Oh, wait, who passed him? I mean, we're not done with the night yet either, but...
No, we're not, but I can't remember who. Maybe he was the RB1. He was either the RB1 or 2
games. We've got, a 40 ball coming from Achane without a doubt. Yeah, in full PPR,
Zeke was ahead of Brees. Yep, he was right ahead of Brees. I had the order reversed in my head, but we'll do some more monologuing if we have to. If you've ever had a question, now is the time to answer it. We will answer any and all questions this evening. Might have a lighter crowd. Some people, the audience has thinned out a bit since the leagues have thinned out a bit. Kyle, I'm not making the playoffs in a number of my weeks. Just going to be honest with you. So I don't have any questions either tonight, but we'll begin. Kyle, we'll start with the softball. How the best ball team's doing. I know you weren't a big fan of the Herbert injury, just like I was not a big fan of the Herbert injury.
Yeah, I'm going to advance more teams than 2 out of 12 or whatever. But I think I'm going to have some pretty dead teams showing up to the playoffs. I have a ton of Mark Andrew teams getting dragged through. I have Herbert teams and I have Texans teams where whether or not Stroud plays, this roster is half dead at this point because they're all with Nico and Tank. So overall, the regular season will have gone well for me, and I'm still going to have some live teams. I also have a ton of Dolphins, which is going to go pretty well. Obviously, I just jinxed it for tonight, but I have Achane in-game injury. I just cursed it 100%. But barring that, I did draft a lot of Dolphins, and they're advancing. So I'm going to have a very plus advance rate. I'm kind of skeptical on how my teams look, but I didn't check all 150 of them or whatever.
I have 5, and I have 2 or 3 that were Dolphin stacks, and I believe they advanced. So Dolphins really key.
How do you know if they were the ones we drafted on stream together?
One of them was 100% the team we drafted on the stream together. I was the last one I checked.
You got to tweet these out. I want to see him.
I know. I do need to look that up and tweet that out. Larry has a fake question because I know he's lolling at his own question. His next question. We'll answer his fake question first, though. Jimmy Graham or Kyle Pitts rest of season, Kyle. Kyle Pitts, got that 36-yard touchdown. Did that keep the bank at bay for one more week in the Dvorchak household?
It did. I think I feel like those teams were probably already dead in the same way that my Drake London and Garrett Wilson teams and Breece Hall to some extent loved week 15 or week 14, the main slate at least. I don't know if those teams loving week 14 really matters because they went from an all-time you thought I was scary in 12th place. Wait till you see me in 10th. But so did you see that? You see that Ian tweeted Kyle Pitts now has as many touchdowns as Jimmy Graham this year, and then Jimmy Graham scored like 30 minutes later.
I did. I actually forgot that was before the touchdown.
I checked his comments to make sure that was the case.
Ian, that's far too much power for one man, Ian Harnitz. Here's Larry's real question, which is honestly, Larry, probably an easy question, but Diggs is really struggling. He's averaging 5 catches for 53 yards over the past 7 games, Kyle. That was the last time he had a 100-yard game. But we're not to the point where we're starting Zay Flowers over Stephon Diggs or even Breece Hall. Are we still just treating this as a slump? Or are we treating this as the beginning of the end for Steph Diggs as an elite fantasy option?
I mean, he's probably done really contending for like top 3, top 5 status, which like he was on the periphery before like it turned out Tyreek Hill's going to go for 2,000 yards. He was on that periphery of being like a top 5 fantasy option. It's like, oh, does he make the leap or does he stay there really? Or is it AJ Brown? Turns out it was like CeeDee Lamb and not Diggs essentially, maybe like Amon-Ra and not Diggs. I'm still treating him as a wide receiver 1. His usage has been solid. Like he's popping up with like 20, 25, like 28% target shares. He just hasn't been quite as dominant as he was early in the season. I am curious to see Dalton Kincaid, I think, is like day-to-day with a rather minor injury, but like that has been a big turning point for the team is Dalton Kincaid playing like a very prominent move the chains, middle of the field type of role. That's been eating into Diggs' role a bit. So I'll be curious to see how his injury shakes out. If we lose him even for a week, I feel like that's probably back to full send for Diggs, even if it's not permanent.
Diggs has the Deron Bland Cowboys this week. I wonder if he can DK Metcalf them. Probably not. Then he does in week 16 have the Chargers. That has to be the get-right spot for Steph Diggs, if not this week against the Cowboys. And if he doesn't blow up against the Chargers, we might be looking at like knocking Steph Diggs all the way out of the first round next year. I mean, that might have already happened, I guess.
I was going to say, I kind of feel like it might have already happened. Yeah, it probably did. I mean, he's like 1-2 turn-ish, but probably 2. He's probably at the second half of the turn.
So we have someone wondering about your Ty Chandler must-add. Andrew is wondering, are we dropping Keaton Mitchell, who just out-touched Gus Edwards on Sunday? It was a wonky game script. Neither back got to 10 carries against the Rams. Would you rather roster Keaton Mitchell or Ty Chandler for the first week of the fantasy playoffs, Kyle?
Probably Ty Chandler. I mean, we need touches. And even in the game where, like you said, Keaton Mitchell out-carries Gus Edwards, it's only good for 9 attempts. And I don't think he got goal line work in this game. If he did, he didn't convert on it. So I still think even, maybe they are having a moment of reckoning with like, we got to give the guy who's putting up 10 yards a touch more opportunities. Even then, I doubt he takes on the goal line work because not only is Gus, like, has he had that all year, he's crushed it all year. He is, I don't say he's automatic, but he is one of the more successful goal line backs when given the opportunity. So I'm going to say the ceiling still kind of feels like a dozen or so touches a game without goal line work. Whereas Chandler, the ceiling is like 3 games of 20 touches. Who do I think is like a better dynasty stash? I'm going to go with the guy who's like more explosive and fun, Keaton. But we're playing a weekly game, and the weekly projection for Chandler is going to be better next week and maybe a few more weeks after that.
Very well timed for me in Dynasty with Ramondre Stevenson injured. Ty Chandler has the Bengals this week, and Keaton Mitchell has the Jaguars. That could be a high-scoring game, but the Jags are the classic pass funnel, as Denny Carter would tell you. They're very easy to pass on. They're tougher on the ground. Does not profile as an amazing Keaton Mitchell week with all 32 teams playing. I agree with Kyle. I would be featuring Mr. Ty Chandler this week. Need 13 points from the Dolphins tonight to earn a bye against the Titans. What are my odds makers? They're playing the Tennessee Titans and Will Levis, who has turned the ball over surprisingly few times, but really seems like he's got like a 4 ball in him, Kyle. 2 interceptions, 2 lost fumbles. What do you think for Mr. FMP 823's odds?
Assuming like this is a defensive scoring I'm familiar with, because defense is one of the most like, oh, my league rewards 14 points for holding your opponent under 6.5 specifically. If they get the 7, if they get that PAT, it's a 10-point loss. But yeah. So assuming it's like generally standard scoring, I'm gonna say like 40%. Because the problem is Will Levis doesn't get to drop back enough for you to really have like a 15-point day. It's not that he's like a great ball protector. I think I've literally tweeted out like, Will Levis is dying for an interception here because he does make like, oh, he's rolling to his left, throws back across the middle of the field, and it is tipped. Ooh, it falls short. Those will convert eventually to interceptions, but he just doesn't pass the ball enough. And you pointed out many times, that's part of what we need for high defensive scoring is the team needs to be forced to pass. That's where most of the defensive points come from.
You might need a lost fumble or 2, this evening from Will Levis. His odds, I would say they're not terrible.
I said 40, so 40 feels
yeah.
good. It's pretty good.
13. Yeah, I mean 13 is a pretty big day. That's probably almost double their projection. They're probably projected like 8 or 9 points. So not double, but you need to like outkick your projections by 33, 40%. That feels right to me. Gary has lost Justin Herbert, haven't we all, brother? Only 2 TVs this week are Jake Browning and Joe Flacco. He's got to buy. Oh, so he's wondering about week 16. It's so matchup dependent. I'll pull up week 16. Jake Browning in week 16 plays the Pittsburgh Steelers, and Joey Flacco and the Cleveland Browns play the Houston Texans. Seems like an easy Joe Flacco call to me. What do you think, Kyle?
I do think like Browning's going to give you, I don't say a rushing floor, but he runs a little bit where Flacco's a complete statue who has been purely propelled by volume and a lot of after the catch stuff. But you could at least for the after the catch stuff, boy, could you make that argument with Jake Browning?
If you want a yak man, I've got quite the quarterback for you in Jake Browning.
I think I'm going to go with Browning, but if you're strongly confident in Flacco, I'm not confident in Browning. So
I'm not strongly confident. I do think like the bill is going to come due majorly for Jake Browning this week, where they're playing the Vikings and like Brian Flores. I mean, he's been making it hell for every quarterback, but especially young quarterbacks this year. The Vikings defense, I saw I forget whose tweet it was, so forgive me. But since like week 4 or 5 has been like historically good. And like Brian Flores
EPA per play since 3 weeks into the season. Like, most of the season, essentially, they've been, I was shocked to see that.
And Brian Flores did the same thing in Miami. There was an article recently too, where they're doing stuff that quarterbacks have literally never seen. This doesn't strike me as a good week for Jake Browning, and that could bleed into week 16. I just think Joe Flacco, I just don't see any way Joe Flacco attempts fewer than 40 passes a game, no matter what the game script is. That's kind of become their identity on offense. That's been his identity on offense for a long time.
That has been his identity. Yeah, my only qualm with Flacco is that they can just hold so many of their opponents to 13 points. And I think when those games come around, you're more likely to see the Flacco, like 31 attempts, they get to hand the ball off a lot and leave with an easy win. But like you said, that is who Flacco's been his entire career. Does he have like the single season pass attempts record? I think he did at one point.
No, Flacco, I don't think ever got quite that high. But we got another Flacco question. They're wondering about Kyler against the 49ers next week, or Flacco versus the Bears. It is not the Bears. It is the Texans in week 16 for Joe Flacco. Do we want Kyler against the 49ers? Oh, no, I guess he's talking about this week. He said next week. I guess he means this Sunday. Excuse me. The Cardinals at the 49ers. So this week now with Kyler, with Flacco. Flacco versus the Bears or Kyler versus the Niners? Sticking with the Joe Flacco debate.
It's still Kyler, but I get it. Bears is a great matchup. Bears, well, not the Vikings kind of turn around, have actually been better in recent weeks, been significantly better. And that's after making moves at the trade deadline to get better. So there's some sort of logic. It doesn't seem like entirely randomness. So I'm going to say just take the rushing production with Kyler, but I get that it's a terrifying matchup. I will say the good news is that it's a terrifying matchup, but teams only throw against the 49ers because as scary as their pass defense is, their run defense is just as good. And of course, their offense makes you have to throw to contend with them. So lots of pass attempts efficiency, certainly dubious for Kyler, but also dropbacks as in pass attempts. Dropbacks are going to give us a lot of rush attempts for Kyler. So I think that alone makes you have to play Kyler, even if Flacco versus Bears should be good.
Garbage time is the garbage time theory. At least he's going to get some garbage time is really going to be put to the test in that Niners game because it's maybe 3/4 of the 49ers just teeing off on Kyler. I do agree with you. You have to just bet on Kyler's legs and also hopefully 40 attempts against the 49ers. Even if they're low quality, the attempts against the 49ers. Chase Higgins, is wondering how we feel about his chances tonight with Derrick Henry and Jalen. Well, we don't know how many points you need there, but we don't like the outlook for Derrick Henry tonight, do we, at all?
That's true, yeah. Yeah. You still have a pretty strong projection because Derrick Henry projects for 12 first half carries and 4 second half carries, just a lot of carries, and maybe a catch or two. And Waddle, I guess Waddle, you're either getting 2.5 PPR points or 19, but that's a lot of points you have banked so far. Maybe volatile points would be a good way to put it. And like you said, I don't know what you're up against, but those guys probably project for a combined roundabout 30 points, maybe more 27. But I looked it up at the time. I believe Flacco threw for the 4th most pass attempts in a season. A few guys have since passed him. We've had a few high pass attempt seasons, but
But Derrick Henry, I'll say Chase needs a first half touchdown from Derrick Henry.
Probably, yeah.
You get that first half touchdown, you're probably going to win your matchup. If you don't get a touchdown in the first half from Derrick Henry, it's almost
here you
certainly
go.
not.
If you'd like to indulge yourself, he says in the chat just a minute ago, I need 25.
He's 25.
Slight favorite. I think you're like a 54% favorite.
Yeah, I would say your favorite, slight favorite is the key. I really think it all comes down to that first half touchdown. If you don't get a first half touchdown from the big dog, I mean, then I don't know. You could have a 2-touchdown game from Waddle, and you're probably going to pull it out then too. Waddle is
that would definitely
talk about someone who's got to have some regret. I guess the Waddle regression things is over because no one's regressing when Tyreek Hill is this good. But you could get there from Jalen Waddle alone against that soft Titans pass defense. Chad is wondering if TCU great Max Duggan will start next week after Easton Stick starts on Thursday Night Football this week against the Raiders. And if so, do we think we could salvage the playoff value of Chargers skill position players? No. What do you think?
Correct. I'm sorry.
It's unfortunate, but
as someone who, as we open the show, me saying like I advanced a lot of teams and they're all dying because like I loved Keenan Allen. I didn't even love Eckler, but I was like, I see how the Chargers turn it all around this year. I don't know if that was even correct or not, but they PPR scammed their way into the playoffs. And just as quickly as we got in, we appear to have gotten the boot. And I don't think Max Dugan is saving us, Duggan. Whatever.
I don't even know. Yeah, they'll go to him. Easton Stick is 28, but
he's 28.
Yeah, it's not good. So maybe they will go to Duggan on a short week. Chad's correct. They're definitely doing Easton Stick. Correct. Who's been the backup all year. Yeah, I don't know. I hadn't really thought about it, Chad, to be honest. The season is basically over. It's already basically over for the Chargers. It's over if they lose the Raiders Thursday. I mean, it's already over. Let's be real. So maybe we'll get Max. This is a little too theoretical. Herbert, everyone's got Herbert problems. So Justin Herbert gone. Ride the Matthew Stafford hot streak. Gamble with Jake Browning. The Rams this week have the Commanders. Kyle Dvorchak.
Yeah, we're riding hot with Stafford. He would have been the poster boy for quarterback in the waiver wire column, but he was like 55%, but still available in nearly half of leagues and the top option in any league, almost certainly any league he's available in. Browning's like fine. I don't hate him. Like
Brian Flores is going to hate him on Saturday, man.
That's
like the problem.
Yeah, we're coming back to earth with Browning. It's just, is that like 250-1, which I think was like his first start? It was a garbage time one, but they all count the same. Or is it like 190-3 picks? The answer is maybe somewhere in between, but it's certainly not 2 touchdowns plus a rushing. Whereas like Stafford at this point, like he's probably playing some of the better ball he's played in the past like 2 years at least.
Because he was playing some of his worst ball before that. I guess with Browning, Brian Flores does like the blitz. I mean, maybe they could pull off a few like perfectly executed screens and get Browning home and fans. I guess there's not zero paths for Browning. I would say there are far fewer paths for Browning. We have a really good username here, Blunder Taker. Someone who's eaten the chalk the past 2 weeks, literally eating it with Zach Moss busting. If Jonathan Taylor's not back this week, though, we're probably still starting Zach Moss over Ty Chandler and Zamir White, correct?
Yeah, we're definitely. I mean, the aspiration is that everything holds from last week and Ty Chandler remains a 3-down back, whereas we have ample evidence to say Zach Moss sees all of the snaps, all the carries, good amount of targets, and goal line work whenever Jonathan Taylor is out. So, Ty Chandler and Zamir White could step into 3-down roles. I think Amir Abdullah plays enough to frustrate Zamir White adders, if the people who added Zamir White. I think Ty Chandler is roughly a 3-down back, but I don't know that for sure. I actually know 100% that Zach Moss is that guy. Yeah,
you're right. It's going to be a committee for the Raiders and almost barely worth dealing with all 32 teams. Zamir White is not going to be in the top 24 for me. I mean, maybe he'll be like around there. He'll be more like in the top, like that 28.
All 50 teams play this week. All 50 teams.
So he'll be in like that RB 28 to 34 range.
I think so.
I feel like I will say we're cutting Zach Moss if Wednesday Jonathan Taylor's practicing in full, right?
I don't think he's practicing because the initial timeline was 2 to 3. Then we saw some reports of 3 to 5.
They were claiming he might come back last week, though. It seems like they're greasing the skids and they're staying ever so slightly alive. I do think they're going to push the envelope, Mr. Jonathan.
But yes, you are right that. I mean, we did see the first time Jonathan Taylor came back. It was a very different version of coming back from an injury because he probably just wasn't even up to conditioned speed yet. But the very first time he did come back, Zach Moss was still involved. but you'd be starting Zach Moss as like a desperation RB4, at which point Chandler and Zamir White would have passed him. So like you said, as soon as Jonathan Taylor comes back, you're almost certainly benching Moss. Maybe you can hold on to him still, but that's about it.
You would hold on to him still if it were week 9. The fact that it's week 15, that just feels like a spot to churn immediately if Jonathan Taylor comes back. And you can't really be planning on contingency value at that point. And you're living to win this week. I'll answer this question for Nino quickly. Josh Dobbs, unfortunately, very clear drop. It's over. Yeah. It's Joe over Joe.
Benched.
Even if he's unbenched this week, this could not be more over for Mr. Josh Dobbs. It's sad. It's a great story. It is over, though. Chad, wondering about the Rams. What is this Rams tight end's name? Davis something? Davis
Allen, I believe.
Davis Maddock, I think. Is he he's probably not a dynasty stash, is he? Was he like a day 2 pick, though, this year?
No, he definitely wasn't a day 2 pick unless he's a day 2 pick.
Yeah, that's true. I guess I would have probably heard of him.
He would have been the Rams' highest pick in 5 years if he was a day 2 pick, buddy.
That's true. Probably not a dynasty stash. He is only 22. He was a 5th round pick.
Yeah.
He was an honorary day 2 pick.
He was a Rams day 2.
Chad, I'll tell you this. In my dynasty league, it's 14 teams. It's 24 roster spots. There's absolutely no one available. I will probably bid on Davis Allen this week, if that answers your question.
I might throw him in a bit as well, because I have like Tucker Kraft's stash. Like Isaiah Likely was like, oh my God, I can't believe someone cut him because he wasn't doing anything. I felt great about that. So yeah, he's in the range for like deep dynasty stash. You don't need to stash him, but it's at least worth considering if you have the roster spot.
I did not know he was only 22 years old. I assumed he was like 24. I assumed he was like a 24-year-old undrafted rookie. I totally memory hold him being a 5th round pick. Just a comment, Rotoworld. Thank you very much, Baron Von Diff. Weekly viewer, Lindorphins. Thoughts on Darren Waller? When he returns, I believe he's supposed to return in week 15, Kyle. Lindorphins is down grievously at tight end with Kyle Pitts and Tucker Kraft. I know we're adding Darren Waller if he was cut loose. Are we ranking him in the top 10, though? Let's say if he comes back in week 15 against and I spelled Giants wrong. I spelled it wrong yet again somehow. If he comes back against the Saints.
With San Francisco Giants.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on Darren Waller?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to need to see it for a week first. Luckily, you said you have the bye, I think. So you have the chance to see it first. But it's just been he wasn't really producing in the first place. No. That was on a very different version of the team.
You say that might have been a Daniel Jones. That seemed kind of like a Daniel Jones problem.
Might have been. But it's like, how do we know? You have to get games under your belt to find out. And I certainly don't want to, in the fantasy playoffs, be like, let's see if this 31-year-old hasn't been as productive, like has been off of his peak for 3 years and is switching teams and plays on a terrible offense. Let's see if he still got it. I'm not finding out in my starting lineup. I'd love to have him stashed on the bench, given that like you could feasibly start him over Pitts if he blows up, but I won't have him ranked as a top 10 option for this coming week.
Lindorphin's wondering about the tight ends. Logan Thomas at the Jets versus the Niners, or Chig versus the Seahawks at the Texans. I feel like probably Logan pretty comfortably there, but what do you think?
Yeah, Logan over Chig, though. I believe this is an extension of the previous question, and we're doing the Pitts thing. I mean, he's back getting all the air yards, and for the first time in God knows how long, he converted. So assuming, this appears to be an extension of the previous question.
Yeah, it is.
We're doing the Pitts thing again. We're going to get hurt again. It's week 15, 16, 17. We got 3 more chances to get hurt. One of them's coming, but the good news is it's tight end. Like, oh no, your opponent had Tucker Kraft and he went 4 for 30 scoreless. The opportunity cost is low, and there's at least some ceiling with Pitts.
I agree that you have to just bet on the Pitts ceiling there. Kyle, I'll let you chime in. I'll answer this one first. I don't think it's necessarily excessive just to stash 3 defenses. A lot of people would probably say that it is. I know most people are now comfortable too. I'll just say this is the time of year. Like if you've had some receiver on your bench that you just know you're not going to use unless like 3 people get hurt, you're probably screwed if those 3 people get hurt.
Correct.
Yeah. So that's why you can't really like hold on to someone like that for dear life. And if you're giving yourself options and you're preventing people from streaming against you, I actually don't think it's a terrible idea to stash 2 or 3 defenses. And that it's annoying, but a good defensive day could swing your matchup and be the reason you make the semifinals or you make the finals. Do you think 3 is excessive, Kyle? Do you think that's getting just gobbling up too many precious roster spots?
It's probably excessive, but there are rosters that I think you can look at and say, like you said, one, for the most part, if you are needing to start, like I've had Josh Reynolds on my bench all year, like if you're needing to start that guy, if you're needing to start that
it's
guy,
already
it's over.
Yeah.
So I do think for the most part, like you shouldn't be stashing, like you should clear every single roster clogger, because even when those guys make your starting lineup, it's because you functionally already lost. I do think though, unless you're like 3 deep at running back or even 4 deep, stashing guys like Zamir White and Ty Chandler is probably better than the 3rd defense. I don't know if it's even better than the 2nd defense though.
Yeah. Guys like Ty Chandler, yes. Guys like, we could probably think of a better example than Josh Reynolds. Like even like Curtis Samuel. I'm like, I don't know, maybe have a 3rd defense to Curtis Samuel. Biff now, he needs to know, will Drake London get 20 PPR points again? They're playing the Panthers, who don't allow a lot of big plays in the pass game. Seems like a bad matchup for Drake London, I will say.
Yeah, I mean, the Panthers games just suck. Like, they're a middle-of-the-road defense by EPA per play. Like you said, they don't give up big plays. They're not a great defense either, in terms of EPA per pass play, that is. But their teams their opponents just do not have to throw. At no point have they ever threatened their opponents with a high-scoring game.
No.
So their opponents don't throw the football at all. No, we're not getting it this week. God, would I love it, because I drafted a lot of these Falcons. Yes. But, like, the best case scenario is that one of Drake London and Kyle Pitts get there. Certainly not both of them again.
And then it could be a classic getting there is a touchdown on 2 or 3 catches, like an 8-yard touchdown. So I would very much temper expectations if I'm thinking about point chasing with Drake London. Not that you're really point chasing. He's probably your wide receiver 3, and you probably have to get him in there. But yeah, if I don't get the bye, my brain is going to explode between Javonte and Singletary at running back and Amon-Ra. Let's see here. It's a little complicated, Kyle.
Amon-Ra, Rashee, Zay Flowers, and I assume that's Devontae.
I'm assuming that's Devontae Adams. First off, tell the man, do you prefer Javonte Williams or Devin Singletary, who for some reason reclaimed control of the Texans' backfield in the rain yesterday?
Yeah, I'm probably not going back to Singletary, just because, like you said, for some reason, it is just impossible to discern what this team wants to do. 2 weeks ago, it seemed almost certain that Dameon Pierce, who had well over half the team's carries in terms of the backfield carries, and even got in for like a reasonable snap share and got the inside the 5 work, he had at least stolen away all of the first and second down and short down and distance stuff. That renders Singletary obsolete. Then in the next week, they completely flip back to it. I'm not going to, we can't get fooled again. Fool us once, fool us twice. Can't get fooled again. It's the extent of my boomer knowledge, Pat. So no more.
I was going to say, do you know what you're referencing there? That's pretty.
Oh, Bush, yeah.
And no, not please, not Bush. Do you know who wrote the classic "Won't Get Fooled Again"?
Wait, what do you mean? What?
Yeah, there's one of the all-time famous classic rock songs is "Won't Get Fooled Again" by The Who.
Oh no.
So yeah,
I'm referencing him not knowing.
Okay, we're talking about. Okay, sorry. We were talking about different things there. But The Who, "Won't Get Fooled Again." Look, it's a classic rock classic. The Texans going forward with the injuries. Tank Dell's out for the season. Nico Collins, I'm assuming, is out. It's the second time he's injured his calf this year. He didn't miss any time. Maybe he did miss a game. I can't remember.
Thought he missed a game, yeah.
Yeah, the calf issues, though, have resurfaced. CJ Stroud, highly questionable with concussion. I love I've appropriated your zero balling. Noah Brown has zero balled both games since he's been back.
I saw that.
Bob Woods, catch for -2 yards against the Jets. Is it just like, can we not count on the Texans in the fantasy playoffs? I wrote as much in my column today. They're playing the Titans, so it is a good matchup. But it seems like everything is going wrong at the exact wrong moment for the Texans.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is. They lose maybe their most explosive receiver. A week later, they definitely lose at that point their most explosive receiver. Dalton Schultz wasn't active for the past 2 weeks. I feel like maybe he's trending toward a return this week, but we'll see. Trust would be a hard word, but I do think you kind of have to go back to Noah Brown in the sense of he's clearly up until the past 2 weeks, he was a far more productive per route and target earning player than Robert Woods. And now they lose their top 2 receivers, maybe their top 3 pass catchers. You either have to say CJ Stroud's throwing for 180 yards going forward, or Noah Brown's going to be at least modestly productive. We're probably past CJ Stroud's peak as far as fantasy production goes, because that's what happens when you lose good receivers, but he'd have to plummet for none of his receivers to have any fantasy value. My bet's going to be on Noah Brown. It'd be a much more comfortable bet if he didn't zero ball 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah, I know. I just wonder if he's not healthy. 0 catches on 7 targets over the past. It was a monsoon yesterday. The matchup is a lot better in the Titans, but very concerning offensive environment for the Texans heading to the fans. CJ Stroud, I don't know. I haven't done my initial rankings yet. I wouldn't be surprised if I'm going to rank him as if he's playing to begin the week.
True. Yeah.
I'll probably have him
out about that.
Yeah, I'll probably have him outside the top 12, even though it's a good match. He'll be right outside the top 12 if he's outside the top 12, I'll say. We're not benching. We're not playing matchups with Justin Fields, correct? If Jared Goff is the alternative.
No, especially since I think like most matchup stuff is going to tell you about like passing efficiency in terms of like, oh, this is a really good EPA per play defense. They probably stop big plays through the air. Don't care. Justin Fields, he could throw for 20 yards in a game and could still get 15 fantasy points.
So then are you dropping Jared Goff for Chase Brown? He had the 3 for 80 and a tutter yesterday.
Through the air, 3 for 80.
Through the air, yes.
Through the air.
You dropping Goff for Chase?
Probably not, because I don't think there's really any realistic way Chase usurps Joe Mixon. He's like in the Keaton Mitchell zone, right? Where I think he's better at making long plays than the starter, but I don't know if he's better at pass pro. I don't know if he knows the in and outs of the playbook to the degree that he can just straight up play his way into 15 touches in a given week. I think that's almost unlikely. It's very unlikely, in fact. So do you think he can actually get like a meaningful 1B level role? I don't even think he can get there.
I don't know, but I'm just pulled up the Lions schedule, and you're not going to be using Jared Goff in the playoffs. I'll tell you that.
What is it?
Versus the Broncos, at the Vikings, at the Cowboys. So Jared Goff, he did his bit for your team. I
think if Stafford is out there, you could swap Goff for Stafford for the fantasy playoffs. But I do think Fields is probably marginally more prone to injuries than your average quarterback.
So that is the thing. I don't think I'm going to be playing matchups with Fields. I don't hate having 2 quarterbacks and protecting yourself for the fantasy playoffs.
Yeah, if you're forced to go down to like Tommy DeVito or Desmond Ridder off the wire, should something happen to Fields, that's like that's a playoff run season ender right there. Yeah. If Fields is out even one game, whereas Goff, it's a downgrade, but you can survive that. So I think you're probably still holding Goff. I would say maybe if like a Ty Chandler is out there, that's at which point that's the point at which I'm willing to gamble and cut ties with Goff. But Chase Brown just doesn't reach that level for me.
That's fair. Zay Jones, 14 targets yesterday. Was that just Christian Kirk being out? Christian Kirk will remain out, of course, for week 16. Or is it Trevor Lawrence not being able to move around, although he was kind of moving around shockingly well. They're playing the Ravens in week 15, so not a good matchup for the Jaguars passing game. What do we have to say about Mr. Zay Jones coming back and finally having a useful day?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably – I mean, I don't think he'll dominate targets going forward. I think it'll be a pretty spread out top 3. But when you have like Calvin Ridley, who earns targets in exclusively one specific way, and Evan Ingram, who basically does that too. If you're throwing less than 3 yards downfield, Evan Ingram's not a bad option. If you want to throw past that and you don't want to throw within 2 feet of the boundary, you have no more options outside of Zay Jones. They all have very specialized roles essentially. So I think we should see pretty reasonable target shares for Zay going forward. I'm going to give him, rest of season rankings are almost done at this point, but he'll be one of the late risers of it. Cause I think until Christian Kirk returns, as in if they make the Super Bowl, essentially, Zay Jones is going to be like a 1B level receiver for this team.
Gosh, he's probably going to outproduce Calvin Ridley. I'm already pre-tilted by this. And one of my main league is points only, so it goes all the way through week 18, Kyle, my Boomer league. And I already know Calvin Ridley's going to get outproduced by Zay Jones. And not pre-tilted at all. We got probably about 10 more minutes. You've been waiting to ask your question. Ask it now. We do have a list that we're going to get to here. But yeah, if you've got a question, get it in now. Elisha is here every week. Half PPR, flex Amari Cooper, Keenan Allen, or Javonte Williams. Even with Easton Stick, it's probably still Keenan Allen, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, there you go.
It's just disappointing.
And it's very, very disappointing. It's also Thursday night against the Raiders. The Raiders have been a weirdly good defense, too. There have been a lot of, quote, weirdly good defenses. It's almost like offense is collapsing around the NFL, Kyle.
I mean, offense is going to be like way more predictive of what happens. So like, oh, the Raiders get like a string of good matchups, or the Raiders just get lucky and like face backup quarterbacks. The offenses collapsed and the Raiders took advantage of that type of deal. As far as like explaining the broad levels of why defenses look so good in some weeks and so bad in others.
Chad again, James Cook. Considering what James Cook is Zeke do we like Zeke this week? Is what we're wondering, Kyle. Do we like Zeke this week still?
We do like Zeke. The big fella gets a lot of touches.
Feed him. Keep feeding Zeke. Yeah, I mean, again, he was literally the RB1 so far for week 14. The Patriots don't have a plan B. They don't have a backup running back. They literally cut Ty Montgomery. That almost could be bad for Zeke because they might like bring in like a more legit running back or something.
Yeah, but, a running back who actually plays running back.
Yeah, it's exactly a running back who plays running back and doesn't get injured after touching the ball 3 times. It's kind of stunning. Ty Montgomery is still around. But yeah, Zeke, even against the Chiefs, who I think are a little more vulnerable on the ground than through the air. I don't think game script's going to matter for the Patriots. They're going to be running the ball like crazy. And Zeke, I will still have in the top 24. This week, Nino up 34-6 tonight. Opponent has Dobbs and A.J. Dillon. I'm assuming Nino has no one. Can Nino feel good going into Monday Night Football tonight?
Yeah, I mean, it'd be somewhat shocking if you lost, especially given A.J. Dillon all these incredible spot starts where he scores 9 PPR points.
You'd basically have to face 3 touchdowns from that duo, and that's pretty unlikely.
Even then,
you can still win.
3 touchdowns is like the bare minimum of like, were they long touchdowns or was it 3 short ones from A.J. Dillon?
It's not inconceivable. A.J. Dillon gets 22 points. Romeo Dobbs gets 13. It is full PPR.
Yeah, I'm going to say you're like 75%.
I was going to say 72%.
Like it's not over. Like, start sweating. If at halftime, they have 1 touchdown amongst the crew, you can probably turn the game.
Blunder takers picked up Isaiah Likely because McBride was on a bye. 10-team PPR league. Should they hold on to Likely or drop him for running back, receiver, or second defense? Doesn't really have a need at running back or wide receiver. I guess what he's saying is he knows he's probably not going to be playing Isaiah Likely over Trey McBride. But do we is Isaiah Likely good enough to keep around in the event of a Trey McBride injury, Kyle?
Yeah, if you're not really in need of running back or wide receiver, go for it. Although I'd say you can probably a little bit of gamesmanship, see what your opponent needs. Like you'll know your opponent before the run of waivers, assuming you're playing in the next week. If they're like really desperate at tight end for some reason, don't give them Likely. If you can block them from getting Ty Chandler, maybe that's the move. So I would just sort of focus on playing defense. Or you could even literally get a second defense if there's a way to get a good scheduling matchup through the next 3 weeks.
I totally agree with your take there. We're just about out of questions. We've got 4 or 5 minutes left. If you've been sitting on a question, get it out there. In fact, we have someone saying they won't get fooled again to us Roto Bros. Kyle, you've never heard who's next? I mean, I know you're only 25 or whatever, but I know you've dabbled a little bit in classic rock, haven't you?
Oh, yeah. I grew up on classic rock, but this is all just like stuff I heard through my dad's like garbage Logitech speakers.
Yeah, you would know Won't Get Fooled Again then if you grew up on. You just don't know. And
I think Bush says can't get fooled again. He says we can't get fooled again, to be clear.
Yeah. Won't Get Fooled Again is slightly more famous than the Bush.
Not for my generation.
Yeah, no, I mean, you got to remember, I'm in the Bush generation too, man. I grew up in the 90s. So I would say Won't Get Fooled Again is more famous than the Bush song. Herbie getting surgery
those like 3 words that Bush said.
Yeah, Herbie getting surgery tomorrow. That's great. Kyle, your mic just cut out. But so we have a real question here. Is Deontay Foreman a thing again, or is this just a one-off? He pretty decisively led the Bears backfield. He did bleed about 30 snaps combined to Roschon and Khalil Herbert, but he out-touched them, I believe, 14-4. Can we feel good about Deontay, or is this another backfield, kind of like the Texans, where we don't really know what to expect on a weekly basis?
I guess I'm like marginally more trusting of Deontay Foreman because when he was active and the starter, they used him a lot. And that has all been more recent than when they healthy scratched him for like 4 weeks in a row. So I'm going to say he's more likely to be the lead back than Devin Singletary. He is still risky.
I agree with that. Questions about Mike Evans, who was a total dud yesterday.
But week 17 is an ejection, pal. That's 3 snaps and an ejection.
I know. He's getting totally ejected in the first quarter against Marshawn Lattimore. As the Packers in week 15, we don't know if Jair Alexander will be back by week 15. Does have the Jaguars in week 16. I say that alleviates my worry that he should have at least one really good game for you in the fantasy playoffs, which might be really all you can ask for from these guys.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I just like mostly don't care about defensive matchups unless it's like, I was gonna say, unless it's Browns Rams this year, and Matthew Stafford just destroyed those two teams, or Browns Ravens, and Stafford just destroyed those two teams. So like, Mike Evans sees all of the air yards, all of the targets. He's a freaking goal line back at wide receiver because they just throw. I mean, 6'5". Of course, you're gonna throw just like jump balls to him in the end zone. So no. Other than the fact that he's 100% getting ejected in week 17, the other 2 weeks should be really fun.
He is getting ejected in week 16. You do hate to see it. Which kicker do you like? Would you like Anders Carlson tonight or Randy Bullock? The Giants are 5.5-point dogs. The total is only 36.5. Who do you see settling for more field goals, basically, in this game tonight? Who are we getting more kicker points from?
Give me Anders.
I think I would take Anders too. I said, is it Anders or Anders?
It's definitely Anders.
I think in America. Oh, I think it's Anders probably in Europe and America. Us uncivilized.
I'm a man of culture, I guess you could say.
I've been to countries where people are named Anders, Kyle. So I've been to Europe. I've heard of Europe. Staying in backfields is the increased role for Chase Edmonds in Tampa Bay. Damage White's value. It did not damage his value against the Colts. We'll say that.
Yeah, I like. Among players that concern me, like, oh, what about this player? Aren't you worried about them? Chase Edmonds doesn't cross that threshold for me.
It does not either. Are we worried enough about Patrick Mahomes that you could see yourself maybe spot starting Matthew Stafford over him in the fantasy playoffs?
No.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm being stubborn.
Yeah, I know. I mean, my narrative take, the boomer in my brain was like, all right, whatever's been holding the Chiefs back snapped yesterday. They're finally going into angry mode. Mahomes is going into like scorched earth mode, and he's going to come out and have like 8 or 9 total touchdowns during the fantasy playoffs.
I will say, like,
this is a total fantasy.
It does vibe like he should destroy every single team he plays, and he gets the Patriots, Raiders, and Bengals, which is a pretty nice run out for the final 3 weeks. So again, all of the issues that have been plaguing them are not like it was a hard matchup. It's that these plumber receivers can't get anything going. But I think he destroys these 3 teams to close out the regular season.
I do too. I mean, it has to make you feel better. In some ways, I guess I could see how it did. But every one of these games, he's basically gotten there in fantasy, and then they just decline to get there for him. Like that bad of luck. He can't stay on this kind of run where they're running this cold. Like even the worst catchers in the entire NFL are going to start catching the ball or lining up correctly. And I really do feel like that it's just been like an extraordinary run of bad luck.
Do you know if that Kadarius Toney touchdown would have counted as a passing touchdown?
Yes, it would. I always do forget though how the receiving yards manifest on that. If Travis Kelce loses his receiving yards, I don't believe he does.
No, so actually, I believe, he gets the receiving yards up till the point of the throw or whatever. Maybe they subtract the difference, but they count as catchless receiving yards would have obviously counted for Toney because do you know Adam Harstad?
Yeah.
He posts about the greatest receiver season of all time in yards per catch, which is like over 100, I think, because a guy caught like a 90-yard pass and then he got like a hook and ladder play to get a catchless like 30 yards or something.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, that's right. I forget you can have 0 catches, but 32 receiving yards. Yeah,
exactly.
That's like a baseball level rules wrinkle. We got 2 more questions here. Yeah, we got a few more. Goddard or likely rest of season. What did Dallas Goedert's someone who's week 14 game I am not familiar with. I don't really remember what he did against the Cowboys.
I have a lot of Goddard. And it was like 4 for 30. It was he showed up. He certainly was technically in the box score in a literal sense, and that was about it. I think it's likely. I mean, Goddard really just hasn't gotten there all year long. His team's on like a cataclysmic downturn. I'm going to go with likely.
They are playing the Seahawks this week, the Eagles, by the way. So I don't know if that makes sense. I would probably still go Goddard, just to be honest. I'd probably still attach myself to that Eagles, even though it's been struggling, that Eagles passing attack. Packers or Fins. D needs 4 points to get in the playoffs, and Tua and Waddle not to get 39. Do we like the Packers against Mr. Tommy DeVito, or do we like the Dolphins against Will Levis? We kind of talked about that earlier.
Packers against Tommy DeVito.
Tommy DeVito, even in his good start, took 9 sacks.
Oh, that's a good. Okay, yeah, that's a good point. Let's go with Packers then.
I think you go with Packers then, just because I do, like you said, Will Levis will even have enough passing volume to. I don't know. They could both have pretty big nights. It's total gut, Kyle. They're both good plays. But yeah, remember, Kyle DeVito, even when he was good, took 9 sacks.
That's a very good point. The thing you're sweating much more, you're probably getting 4 points from your defense, is the fact that like the most explosive offense's quarterback and number 2 receiver only need 39, which doesn't sound like a lot, but like 2 long plays to Waddle. We haven't gotten a lot of long plays, but this could be the night.
You really need a Waddle not to score, is what we. Unfortunately, we need the chat to be over. We are out of time. We really hope you guys clap. Well, some of you are still trying to make the playoffs, so good luck tonight with the Monday night doubleheader with both games at the same time. Last week I told someone, no, they stagger the start times. One's at 7:15 Eastern, one's at 8:15 Eastern.
I would have assumed that was for sure
what
they were doing.
Really confidently in real life to someone at my kid's school, and I forgot who it was, and I've been meaning to tell them, no, I was wrong about that. I'm assuming they figured it out by now. So best of luck. Thank you so much for joining us for these chats all season. I think we're doing one more chat. I think we're running it back on 12:18. We will not be running it back on 12:25. I can't remember what's going on that day. But we will not be here on Christmas Day. We will be back for one final chat in week 16. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for your questions. Good luck this evening and this week. For Kyle and Pat, we will talk to you later.